Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. I'm Emmanuel, I'm an airline pilot, and in today's video I want to demonstrate to you an engine failure in the A2A Piper Comanche. We are currently cruising along coming from Helgoland on our way towards Kiel, and we are just reaching the German shore when all of a sudden this happens. Okay, memory items at first, autopilot off, let's gain as much altitude from our speed as we can. And we're going to reduce the speed to 105 miles an hour. Okay. Pretty much like so. Trim it out. And then it is about time to get out our checklists. We got them already here on the iPad in the emergency checklist. Okay. Power loss in flight. Airspeed 105 miles an hour. Fuel selector fullest tank. Let's see, they are both about equally full. We've been operating on the right-hand tank. You know what? Let's switch that to the left. Just in case there's something wrong with the right-hand tank. So, fuel pump on. Mixture, full rich. And you can see the engine's running again. So the checklist actually works. For the purpose of our video, however, let's assume the mixture full rich didn't work. So, carburetor heat on. Primer in and locked, so check that it isn't, for example, turned to the side. That might introduce more fuel into the engine than the engine can actually handle. Okay, magnetos, check, they're on both. Engine gauges, check. We've got oil pressure, we've got fuel pressure, we've got fuel in the tanks. Okay, fuel selector alternate tank, we tried that. So, carb heat off, off, fuel pump off, off. Okay, we couldn't restore power, so that's what we have to live with. Okay then. Oh there, we've got an airfield. So let's try and stay close. In the meantime, let's go to the power off approach checklist. Airspeed 97 miles an hour, I'm flying those already. Propeller full aft. So that's full aft. That is drastically going to reduce our drag. Okay, landing site locate. We'll pick the airfield we have down there. So, transponder 7700 and radio, Mayday, 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 November 6229 Papa, engine failure. We're gliding towards Echo Delta X-Ray Bravo. Okay, seatbelts tight, gear down, flaps down, obviously only once we've got the landing assured. Now at this point we're close enough, so let's take the gear. Keep the speed constant at 97 miles, see how our gliding range is affected. Okay, looks alright. Flaps onto the first notch. And then we can already have a look at the power of landing checklist. So, landing gear down, up if landing on water, it's down. Flaps, down. Now comes the interesting thing of judging our altitude correctly, making sure that we make the field. Okay, throttle closed, closed, mixture, idle cutoff, magnetos, off, master switch, off, fuel selector, off, this prevents fire after landing. Okay, seatbelts tight, and finally door unlatch. That's in case there is any damage to the airplane on the landing. Okay, and that's our power of landing checklist complete, and down here is the airport. So, let's just about get into here. And we're down. Okay. Parking brake set. Let's quickly turn off all the rest. and it's time to evacuate. Alright, so let's go over what actually just happened. Now, as you have probably seen, I cut the engine by pulling the mixture completely out. So for that reason, when we went into the power loss in-flight checklist, what we do over here at first is we try to restore every possibility that we could have messed up. So the first thing is we set the best gliding speed, 105 miles an hour. Then we go fuel selector, fullest tank. Okay, so fullest tank is actually just in case we might have run the tank dry. Fuel pump on, you never know. Some additional fuel pressure can never hurt. Mixture full rich. You might have leaned a bit too much and have forgotten about it, or have descended to a lower air where all of a sudden the mixture is no longer sufficient to keep your engine running. So mixture full rich. Carb heat on. You may have collected some carburetor icing, and turning on the carburetor heat might clear the engine failure. Then primer in and locked. Very important over here. If your primer is just slightly open, keep in mind, over here we can rotate and pull it only, but in a real airplane it might just be open just a tiny bit and let a little bit of fuel through. So for that reason, always make sure it's in and locked. So magnetos check. Of course, you may have accidentally left the switch in the R position and then accidentally hit it and put it to off. Or maybe you had it on just a single magneto and that magneto failed in flight. Stuff like that, it does happen and did cause engine failures in the past. So if no fuel pressure is indicated, fuel selector alternate tank. So we did have fuel pressure. However, I tried the alternate tank anyway because obviously it wouldn't work on this tank and it doesn't cost me anything to try to change to the alternate tank at this point. The engine is already killed anyway, so what can happen? Okay, and basically if the power is not restored, or rather if the power is restored, we turn the carb heat back off and the fuel pump back off. If power is not restored, trim for 97 miles per hour and prepare for emergency landing. Okay, so preparation for emergency landing is what happens next and is the power of approach and the power of landing checklist. And you can see we started in 3,500 feet and we were really busy with all those checklists pretty much all the way down. So imagine what it is like when this happens to you in a real aircraft and when it catches you totally off guard, you are not prepared for it, and as so many general aviation flyers like to do, you're flying at a low altitude, meaning you have little time available. So you saw how we struggled getting those checklists done and reaching the airport at the same time. Now imagine this happening in real life when you know that your actual life depends on it. Alright, let's go over the checklist and what it all actually means. So power of approach, airspeed 97, that's basically the speed that gives us a good average between the best climb and between the best angle of climb and the best rate of climb. Then propeller full aft, that is going to feather the propeller and therefore going to reduce our drag. And when that is done, landing site locate. Obviously we want to assure that we stay alive, and then we want to make sure that we get help. So transponder 77, radio 121.5 mayday. So that's what the checklist does over here. Then we go over into preparing for what's going to happen after the touchdown. Assuming we damage the airplane, but we survive the touchdown, seatbelts tight to secure ourselves, but then, when the landing site can be easily reached, gear down, flaps down, preparing the airplane for the landing. Now let's go into the power of landing checklist. The reason we have the gear and the flaps on the approach checklist as well is because you might become time limited and you may otherwise forget about the landing gear, which really isn't the best thing to do, but believe me, when a situation like this happens to you, you will be under so much stress that you will be surprised how you can forget the easiest things. So, power of landing checklist. Emergency landings should normally be made at the lowest possible airspeed with full flaps. Now, keep in mind, that applies to emergency landings in general. In our case, we were able to reach an airfield, so we could use a little bit higher speed, but you saw how I pulled the speed out just about on the very short final there. So landing gear down, gear up if landing on water, Flaps down. Once again, we got the 2 items over here, assuring that we have the most survivability on the landing. And next up, we secure the airplane for the landing. So throttle's closed, mixture idle cutoff, magnetos off. That basically aims to prevent a fire. The same goes for the next 2 points here. Master switch off, fuel selectors off. So with the master switch, we try to get rid of as many possible sources of a fire after landing by switching off electricity, and then fuel selectors off basically tries to do the same thing and isolate fuel in the tanks so that in case a fire erupts after landing from the instrument panel up here, it may be starved of fuel and burn all the fuel that was in the engine section in the pipes, but not be fed from the wing tanks. And that's what we're trying to achieve with this part of the checklist. Finally, seatbelt tight, of course, again, and door unlatch. Now, why do we unlatch the door? Well, that's quite easy. Imagine the door is closed and you do a really hard landing. You may be flipping the plane over and everything. The hull of the airplane might be bent, and when the hull is bent, it might become impossible to unlatch the door, and there have been cases where people were trapped inside a burning airplane after an otherwise successful emergency landing. For that reason, unlatch the door so that in case you bend the airplane on the landing, you can still smash that door open and get out. And that is really the checklist complete. Now you saw we started at 3,500 feet, and we really took all those 3,500 feet in order to reach the checklist. And that was in a situation where I knew the failure was coming and where I knew where the next airport was. So imagine this happening when you're somewhere en route. You maybe didn't look at the terrain around you too closely, picking landing sites in advance, and all of a sudden the engine quits on you. You may only have 2,000 feet above the ground, or maybe even just 1,000 if you're in an en route scenario. So be careful there. Always keep in mind the scenario around you and the terrain around you when you're flying a single engine aeroplane. Alright, that's going to be it for the engine failure in flight. Now let me just give you one more demo and return the airplane to the holding point, and then I see you just over there. What I want to show you over here is the engine failure just after takeoff and why you need to be careful with an immediate return. So many of you would possibly want to try to immediately turn back to your departure airfield if the engine fails after takeoff. Well, be careful with that. The minimum altitude at which you should consider that is 1,000 feet, and even that is not going to be always possible. There are a lot of risks associated with slow flights near the ground, and it is evident from past accident reports that pilots do tend to pull the nose up when they are approaching the ground for an off-field landing, or when they are desperately trying to reach something that is simply out of gliding range. That, combined with high bank angles during turns, can easily lead to a stall and the airplane flipping over very close to the ground, which in almost all cases is going to end deadly. So, in this demo, let's climb up to 1,000 feet and then we'll try to do an immediate return. Now, at the 1,000 feet, you have to keep in mind, you have approximately 1 minute to the ground. A standard rate turn would take you 2 minutes, so a 180 turn takes you about 1 minute. But that does not yet bring you back close to the runway. You will see what I mean when we are doing this. So, parking brake released, take off. Rotate. Insufficient runway available for landing. Gear up. Okay, let's turn into the traffic pattern. If an engine fails now, you have no chance of getting back. There are some nice fields over there, which we may want to go to, but over there, not so much. So, we're on the upwind, reaching about 1,000. Bang, engine failure. You barely have time to react now, so quick check. Fuel pump on, mixture, that is obviously how I just killed it, so we'll pretend it's on. And that's about it. Okay, so, can't restart the engine, fine, secure it. Props, back, fuel pumps, off, magneto off, and fuel off. Okay. So, you can already see what I mean with losing airspeed because you get too close and desperately try to pull up. And this was out of a traffic pattern situation where we were already kinda closer to the airfield than if we did a straight out departure. But now look at that. That's not really an angle that you wanted to be in order to line yourself up that close to the runway. Do you? Alright then, gear down. Let's try to do it anyway, just to see what happens. But look at the bank angle I need close to the ground. Combine that with losing my speed. There you got it. Stall warning. That means wings level. And here we are. So, you see that? Now imagine there were other aircraft or other obstacles in the area. And you can see how even out of 1,000 feet within the traffic pattern, it was close to impossible to re-land on the departure airport. And while we made it to the departure area, we didn't even make it properly onto the runway. And that is pretty much the reason why immediate turnbacks should only be considered above 1,000 feet and why it is often going to be a lot safer just to pick an appropriate field in the area around. So do keep your eyes open. In any case, that's going to be it for this video. I hope you found this one interesting. If you did, do let me know in the comments below. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you all again on the next one. As always, like, comment and subscribe as it really helps out the channel. And if you really love what I'm doing, I would appreciate a small donation through the Buy Me Coffee link in the video description below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all again on the next one.